Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the vast viewing window. The stellar dominion was the pride of the Nexari fleet, equipped with weapons that could destroy planets and shields that had never been broken. For 500 cycles, Veltar had commanded this ship, bringing order to the galaxy through superior technology and proper combat doctrine. The Nexari way of war was elegant and civilized. When conflicts arose, they would demonstrate their technological superiority, engage in formal duels between champions, and accept the swift surrender of their opponents. It was a system that had worked perfectly for millennia. The galaxy was peaceful under Nexari rule, because everyone understood the futility of resisting their advanced civilization. Today, however, Veltar was studying reports about a new species that troubled him. They called themselves humans, and they had appeared seemingly from nowhere, expanding aggressively through several star systems. Initial scans showed their technology was primitive by Nexari standards. Their ships were crude metal constructions, their weapons simple projectile systems, and their tactics appeared chaotic and disorganized. "Sir," called out his tactical officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the observation post in Sector 7. "Display it," Veltar ordered. The holographic display showed a space battle between human ships and Keth pirates. Veltar watched with growing unease as the scene unfolded. The human vessels were clearly outmatched by the Keth raiders, who possessed superior speed and firepower. Any civilized species would have withdrawn or surrendered when faced with such odds, but the humans did neither. Instead, they fought with a disturbing intensity that made Veltar's skin crawl. When one human ship lost its weapons, the crew piloted it directly into a Keth vessel, destroying both ships in a massive explosion. When another human ship was boarded, the crew continued fighting in the corridors until the last person was dead, taking many Keth warriors with them. "Why do they not surrender?" asked his second officer. "Their defeat is certain." Veltar had no answer. In all his experience, no species fought to complete annihilation when defeat was obvious. It was wasteful and illogical. Perhaps these humans simply lacked the intelligence to recognize when they were beaten. The battle ended with all human ships destroyed, but they had taken most of the Keth fleet with them. The pirates withdrew, their forces too damaged to continue raiding. Veltar found himself staring at the wreckage, trying to understand what he had witnessed. "Sir, we have new orders from High Command," announced the communications officer. Veltar read the message with satisfaction. The Nexari leadership had decided to bring these humans into the Galactic Order. As the most experienced fleet commander, Veltar was chosen to make first contact and secure their submission. It would be a simple matter. Once the humans saw Nexari technology, they would understand their place in the galaxy. The Stellar Dominion and its escort fleet traveled to the edge of human space, where they detected a small patrol group. The human ships were even more primitive up close than the reports had suggested. Their hulls showed crude welding marks, their weapons were mounted externally like an afterthought, and their shields flickered weakly. "Incoming transmission from the lead human vessel," reported the communications officer. "Put it through," Veltar said, adjusting his formal robes. The main screen showed the bridge of the human ship. It was cramped and utilitarian, filled with blinking lights and exposed cables. In the center sat a human male wearing a simple blue uniform. His face was weathered and scarred, with dark eyes that seemed to study everything around him. "I am Captain Hyunwoo of the Earth defense ship Incheon," the human said. His voice was calm but carried an undertone that Veltar could not identify. "You have entered human space. State your intentions." Veltar was surprised by the directness. Most species began first contact with elaborate greetings and expressions of honor. These humans seemed to skip such civilized pleasantries. "I am Commander Veltar of the Nexari Empire," he replied formally. "We have come to welcome your species into the galactic community." "Welcome us?" Captain Hyunwoo raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting. And what does this welcome involve?" "Recognition of Nexari authority over this region of space," Veltar explained patiently. "In return, your species will receive protection and access to advanced technology." The human captain was quiet for a moment, then spoke to someone off-screen. Veltar caught fragments of the conversation. The humans were discussing something called Protocol 7, and mentioning names like Admiral Sora and Dr. Junho. "Commander Veltar," Captain Hyunwoo said finally, I appreciate your offer, but humanity must decline. Veltar blinked in confusion. This was not how first contact was supposed to proceed. Every species in the galaxy recognized Nexari superiority once they witnessed their technology. These humans had not even asked for a demonstration. Perhaps you do not understand, Veltar said carefully. We are offering you a place in galactic civilization. The alternative is unfortunate. Captain Hyunwoo leaned forward in his chair. Commander, you seem like a reasonable being, so let me be clear. We've studied your transmissions since you entered our space. We know about your empire, your technology, and your methods. We're not interested in joining. Then you choose conflict? Veltar asked, genuinely puzzled. We choose independence, the human replied. If you force the issue, then yes, there will be conflict. Veltar felt a cold certainty settle in his mind. These humans were clearly too primitive to understand their situation. Perhaps a small demonstration would clarify matters. Captain Hyunwoo observe, Veltar said, then ordered his weapons officer to target a nearby asteroid. A single beam of coherent energy lanced out from the stellar dominion. The asteroid, roughly the size of a small moon, simply vanished in a flash of vaporized matter. The demonstration had taken less than a second and used only a fraction of the ship's power. Impressive, Captain Hyunwoo admitted. Your weapons are indeed advanced. Now do you understand? Veltar asked. I understand your technology, the human said. But you clearly don't understand us. What is there to understand? Submit or face battle. Captain Hyunwoo's expression changed. For the first time he smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. His dark eyes seemed to grow harder, and Veltar felt an unexpected chill. Commander, the human said quietly. We don't do battle. We do war. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew waited for orders, but he found himself hesitating. Something in the human's voice had carried a warning that his logical mind could not quite process. Sir, his tactical officer prompted. Veltar straightened his shoulders. These were primitive beings with crude technology. Whatever they meant by war, it could not possibly challenge the might of the Nexari Empire. He had conducted dozens of such encounters, and they always ended the same way. Prepare for standard conquest protocol, he ordered. These humans will learn to respect civilized authority. But as his crew moved to carry out his commands, Veltar found himself thinking about that strange smile and wondering what exactly these humans meant by war. Veltar decided to follow proper Nexari protocol for dealing with stubborn species. He would demonstrate overwhelming force, challenge their leaders to formal combat, and accept their inevitable surrender. It was a process he had completed many times before, and it always worked. The Nexari fleet moved deeper into human space, sensors scanning for military installations and population centers. What they found confused Veltar even more. Human colonies were scattered across dozens of worlds, but they showed no signs of central coordination. Each planet seemed to operate independently, with different ship designs and varying technology levels. Sir, we are detecting unusual activity on the human worlds, reported his science officer. They appear to be moving civilians away from population centers. Standard evacuation procedures, Veltar said dismissively. They are preparing for our arrival. But something about the human response troubled him. Most species gathered their populations in easily defended areas when faced with superior force. The humans seemed to be spreading out, making themselves harder to protect rather than easier. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The main screen showed a different human this time, an older female wearing a dark uniform decorated with strange symbols. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held the same unsettling intensity Veltar had seen in Captain Hyunwoo. I am Admiral Sora of the Outer Colonies Defense Fleet, she said without preamble. You have one opportunity to withdraw from human space peacefully. Admiral Sora, Veltar replied formally, I am Commander Veltar of the Nexari Empire. Your species has refused our generous offer of protection. We are prepared to demonstrate why this was unwise. Demonstrate away, Admiral Sora said calmly. Veltar was taken aback by her casual tone. This was not how defeated enemies were supposed to behave. Where was the fear? Where were the desperate pleas for mercy? Very well, he said. According to Nexari tradition, we challenge your greatest warrior to single combat. When your champion falls, your species will submit to our authority. Admiral Sora was quiet for a moment, then began laughing. It was not a happy sound. Single combat, she repeated. Commander, you really don't understand humans at all. Explain, Veltar demanded. We don't have champions, Admiral Sora said. We have soldiers. Millions of them. Every human who can hold a weapon is a soldier. Every human who can build a weapon is a soldier. Every human who can think of new ways to kill enemies is a soldier. As she spoke, Veltar's sensors began detecting movement throughout human space. Ships were launching from hidden bases, orbital platforms were powering up weapons, and even civilian transports were changing course toward military positions. This is inefficient, Veltar protested. Single combat determines the stronger species without wasteful casualties. Wasteful? Admiral Sora's voice turned cold. Commander, you threatened our homes, our families, our entire species. Did you expect us to risk everything on one fight? A younger human officer appeared on the screen behind Admiral Sora. He leaned forward to whisper something in her ear. Veltar caught the words Scorched Earth Protocol, and Dr. Junho confirms. What is this protocol? Veltar asked. Admiral Sora smiled the same disturbing smile Captain Hyunwoo had shown. Something you'll understand soon enough. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at sensor readings that made no sense. Human activity was increasing exponentially across their entire territory. Factories were switching to military production. Civilian ships were being armed, and even children were being moved to underground facilities. Sir, his tactical officer said nervously, the humans appear to be mobilizing their entire civilization. For what purpose? Veltar wondered aloud. His answer came when another human ship approached under a flag of truce. It was smaller than the others, obviously a research vessel rather than a warship. The human who appeared on screen was elderly, wearing simple civilian clothes and thick glasses. I am Dr. Junho, the human said. I study military history. Admiral Sora thought you might benefit from a lesson. Speak, Veltar said, curious despite himself. Your species has mastered what we call limited warfare, Dr. Junho explained. You fight for territory, resources, political advantage. When you win enough battles, your enemies surrender and life goes back to normal. This is civilized conduct, Veltar agreed. Perhaps, Dr. Junho said, but humans learned a different kind of fighting. We call it total war. When human survival is threatened, we don't just send our armies. We send everything. On his screen, Dr. Junho showed images from human history. Veltar saw massive factories producing nothing but weapons, entire populations working to support military efforts, and cities burning as armies fought street by street. Your champion idea would work on most species, Dr. Junho continued. But humans have spent thousands of years fighting wars where losing meant extinction. We learned that when your species' survival is at stake, you use every resource, every person, every idea you have. This is barbaric, Veltar said, disturbed by the images. This is necessary, Dr. Junho corrected. You see, Commander, you made a critical error. You didn't just challenge our military, you threatened our existence. To humans, that means only one response is possible, which is, we destroy you completely or we die trying. There is no middle ground. As Dr. Junho spoke, Veltar's sensors showed human fleets moving throughout their space, but they were not positioning for defensive battles. Instead, they seemed to be leaving. Where are your ships going? Veltar demanded. Dr. Junho adjusted his glasses. That would be telling. But I will say this, you wanted to fight humans, so now you get to fight humans, all of us. Everywhere we can reach. The research ship turned and jumped away, leaving Veltar with more questions than answers. His tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. Sir, the human fleet movements don't match any known battle doctrine, the officer reported. They're not massing for defense or preparing for retreat. They're scattering. Veltar felt the first stirring of unease. In all his experience, defeated enemies either gathered for one last desperate battle or fled to regroup. These humans were doing neither. They were spreading out like some kind of infection, moving to positions that made no tactical sense. Sir, we're receiving another transmission, the communications officer announced. This time, the screen showed a much younger human, barely more than a child by Nexari standards. He wore a military uniform but looked like he should be in school. I am Lieutenant Minjun, the young human said. I wanted to thank you, Commander Veltar. Thank me. For what? For showing us that we need to take our safety seriously, Minjun replied. We've been too relaxed, too peaceful. But you've reminded us what happens when we're not ready for war. You are not ready for war, Veltar said firmly. Your technology is primitive, your ships are weak, and your tactics are chaotic. Our technology, yes, Minjun agreed. Our ships, probably. But our tactics? The young human smiled. Commander, you're about to learn the difference between fighting a battle and fighting a war. The transmission ended, and Veltar was left staring at sensor readings that showed human activity, reaching levels that should have been impossible for their technology base. Somehow, they had turned their entire civilization into a military machine in a matter of hours. Sir, his science officer said quietly, I'm detecting some kind of broadcast being transmitted throughout human space. Put it through. A single voice echoed through the bridge, speaking in the human language but translated by their computers. It was Admiral Sora, and she was addressing her entire species. Citizens of humanity, she said, our homes are threatened. Our children are threatened. Our future is threatened. You know what this means. Across human space, billions of voices answered in unison. We do not surrender. We do not retreat. We do not lose. Veltar felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was not how civilized species were supposed to behave. Veltar decided to end this confusion quickly. He would demonstrate proper Nexari military doctrine and force the humans to understand their position. The first step was to capture a few colonies and accept their surrender. Once other human worlds saw how easily their defenses fell, they would abandon this foolish resistance. He selected a mid-sized human colony called New Busan as his first target. The world had modest defenses and a population of several million. According to Nexari protocol, he would destroy the orbital defense platforms, demand surrender, and then accept the colony's submission to imperial authority. The attack proceeded exactly as planned. Nexari weapons destroyed the human defense satellites in minutes. Their ground-based weapons were equally ineffective against Nexari shields. Within hours, Veltar's forces had achieved complete orbital superiority. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the colony, his communications officer reported. Veltar expected to see desperate human leaders begging for mercy. Instead, he saw a middle-aged human woman in civilian clothes standing in what appeared to be an empty warehouse. I am Governor Haye-jin of New Busan, she said calmly. Congratulations on your military victory, Commander Veltar. You surrender? Veltar asked, surprised by her calm tone. Surrender? Governor Haye-jin looked confused. No, we're just acknowledging that you won the battle for orbital space. The war is just beginning. Before Veltar could respond, the transmission ended. His tactical officer was studying sensor readings with a puzzled expression. Sir, I'm detecting massive movement on the planet's surface, but it doesn't match any evacuation pattern I've seen before. Veltar ordered a detailed scan of New Busan. What he found made no sense. The humans had not gathered in defensive positions or fled to hidden bunkers. Instead, they appeared to be disappearing. Where did they go? He demanded. Unknown, sir. The population centers are emptying, but our sensors cannot detect where the humans are moving. Veltar decided to land ground forces to secure the colony and accept their formal surrender. The first shuttles touched down in the capital city to find it completely empty. The humans had abandoned their homes, taking everything valuable with them, but they had left gifts behind. The first Nexari patrol to enter a government building triggered an explosion that destroyed the entire structure. The second patrol found that the water treatment plant had been poisoned. The third discovered that the power grid had been sabotaged to overload any equipment connected to it. Sir, his ground commander reported, we have secured the capital, but it appears the humans have made the entire city uninhabitable. Find the population, Veltar ordered. They cannot have simply vanished. His forces spent days searching New Busan, finding only empty buildings and dangerous traps. The humans had not just evacuated, they had destroyed anything that might be useful to occupying forces. Worse, small groups of humans kept appearing to attack supply convoys before disappearing again into terrain they knew better than any invader could. After a week of frustration, Veltar received another transmission from Governor Haye-jin. This time she was standing in a forest wearing camouflage clothing and carrying weapons. How are you enjoying New Busan, Commander? She asked cheerfully. Where are your people? Veltar demanded. Everywhere, she replied. In the forests, in the mountains, in caves you haven't found yet. We know every rock, every tree, every hiding place on this world. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. You cannot win, Veltar said. We control the orbital space. We can bombard any position you occupy. Then you'll bombard empty forests, Governor Hyojin said. We'll move. We'll hide. We'll wait. And every day you stay here, we'll kill a few more of your soldiers, not many. Just enough to remind you that this is our world, not yours. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a planet he technically controlled, but could not actually hold. His forces owned the cities, but the humans owned everything else. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from High Command, his communications officer announced. Veltar read the message with growing alarm. Similar situations were developing on every world where Nexari forces had landed. The humans were not defending their colonies in any recognizable way. Instead, they were making them impossible to occupy. But the real shock came in the next part of the message. Human ships had been detected near Nexari territory. Not just a few scouts, but entire fleets moving toward systems that had been peaceful for centuries. This is impossible, Veltar muttered. Their ships are too slow to have reached our territory so quickly. His science officer was studying long-range sensor data with a confused expression. Sir, the human vessels approaching our space are not the same designs we observed in their territory. Show me, the display revealed human ships that looked nothing like the crude vessels Veltar had encountered. These were sleeker, faster, and carried weapons that registered as significant threats to Nexari sensors. Where did these ships come from? Veltar asked. His answer came in another transmission, this time from a human he had not seen before. The man was young, wearing a uniform that was different from the others, and he was standing on what appeared to be the bridge of one of the advanced ships. Commander Veltar, I am Captain Young-Ho of the Human Deep Space Fleet, the man said. I wanted to thank you for giving us an excuse to dust off some old projects. What old projects? The ships we built just in case we ever met someone like you, Captain Young-Ho explained. We've been working on these designs for decades, but we never had a reason to build them. Your invasion provided excellent motivation. Veltar felt his confidence beginning to crack. How many ships do you have? Enough, Captain Young-Ho replied. See, while you were studying our patrol vessels and thinking we were primitive, we were studying you. We knew that sooner or later, someone with superior technology would threaten us. So we prepared. The human captain gestured to something off-screen. These ships were built in hidden facilities throughout human space. We've been testing them, training with them, and waiting for the day we might need them. Today is that day. What do you want? Veltar asked. Originally, we wanted you to leave us alone, Captain Young-Ho said. But you've already invaded our world, so now we want you to understand something important. Which is? You taught us that the galaxy is not as peaceful as we hoped. Thank you for that lesson. Now we're going to teach you something in return. What lesson? Captain Young-Ho's expression turned cold. That when you threaten human worlds, humans threaten your worlds. When you attack our colonies, we attack your colonies. When you try to make us submit, we make you regret it. The transmission ended and Veltar stared at sensor readings showing dozens of human fleets moving toward Nexari space. But these were not random attacks. The humans were targeting specific systems, mining colonies, agricultural worlds, and industrial centers that supported Nexari civilization. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, the humans appear to be targeting our civilian infrastructure. Veltar was horrified. That is not how civilized warfare is conducted. Military targets only. But even as he spoke, he realized the humans did not care about civilized warfare. They cared about winning, and they had decided that the best way to win was to make the cost of fighting them higher than the Nexari were willing to pay. Sir, we're receiving an urgent message from Admiral Sora, the communications officer announced. The human admiral appeared on screen, but she was no longer in a military facility. She was standing in what looked like a civilian factory, surrounded by humans working frantically to build weapons. Commander Veltar, she said, I wanted you to see this. Every human world you're not occupying is now a weapons factory. Every human you're not fighting is building something to fight you with. Every day you continue this war, we become more dangerous. She gestured to the activity around her. This factory made farming equipment yesterday. Today it makes explosives. Tomorrow it will make whatever we need to remove you from our space. This is madness, Veltar protested. This is survival, Admiral Sora corrected. You wanted to conquer humanity, Commander. But you never asked the most important question. Which question? What is humanity willing to sacrifice to remain free? The transmission ended with images of similar factories on dozens of human worlds, all producing weapons, all staffed by civilians who had become soldiers, all working with the same grim determination Veltar had seen in every human face. For the first time in his long career, Veltar began to wonder if the Nexari Empire had made a terrible mistake. Veltar received urgent orders from High Command to end the human resistance immediately. The Empire was growing concerned about human attacks on Nexari civilian targets, something that had never happened in their long history of conquest. Veltar was authorized to use maximum force to crush human military capability once and for all. He gathered his entire fleet and prepared for what should have been the final battle. Intelligence suggested the humans had assembled their remaining forces around a system called Terra Nova. It would be a perfect opportunity to destroy their military capacity in one decisive engagement. But when the Nexari fleet arrived at Terra Nova, they found something unexpected. The human fleet was waiting for them, but it was not the collection of primitive ships Veltar had expected. These vessels were clearly the same advanced designs Captain Young Ho had shown him, but there were far more of them than should have been possible. "Sir, we are detecting over 300 human vessels," his tactical officer reported. "Where did they get so many ships?" Before Veltar could answer, a transmission came through from the human fleet. This time he recognized the face on the screen. It was Admiral Sora, but she was wearing a different uniform and standing on a bridge that hummed with advanced technology. "Welcome to Terra Nova, Commander Veltar," she said. "I hope you're impressed by what human industry can accomplish when properly motivated. Where did these ships come from?" Veltar demanded. "We built them," Admiral Sora replied simply. "Every human world that isn't fighting your ground forces is building ships. Every factory, every shipyard, every manufacturing facility is working around the clock. Your invasion taught us the importance of preparation." Veltar studied the tactical display. Even with superior technology, the Nexari fleet was outnumbered 3-1. But numbers alone should not matter against Nexari shields and weapons. "You cannot win," he said confidently. "Our technology is still superior, is it?" Admiral Sora asked. "Let's find out." The battle began exactly as Veltar expected. Nexari weapons tore through human ships, destroying them with ease. But for every human vessel that died, 2 more seemed to take its place. And the humans were not fighting the way civilized species were supposed to fight. Instead of massing for coordinated attacks, human ships spread throughout the battle area like a swarm. Small groups would attack Nexari vessels from multiple directions, force them to use power defending themselves, then retreat while other groups attacked different targets. "Sir, they're not trying to win," his tactical officer observed. "They're trying to exhaust our energy reserves." Veltar realized the truth of that statement. The humans were not fighting to destroy the Nexari fleet. They were fighting to force it to use up its power supplies, and it was working. Nexari ships began showing reduced shield strength as their generators struggled to keep up with constant attacks. But the real shock came when Veltar detected new human ships arriving in the system. Not reinforcements from other battles, but fresh vessels that appeared to have been built recently. "Sir, those ships are showing manufacturing signatures from this week," his science officer reported in disbelief. Admiral Sora's voice came through the communication system again. "Surprise, Commander. While you've been trying to conquer existing human worlds, we've been building new ones. Mobile shipyards, orbital factories, asteroid mining operations. Your war taught us that we needed to become more than just farmers and traders." Veltar watched in growing horror as more human ships continued to arrive. The battle was turning from a decisive engagement into a prolonged siege, and the humans showed no signs of running out of vessels. Then something happened that made his blood freeze. A group of human ships broke away from the main battle and jumped out of the system. Not retreating, leaving with obvious purpose. "Where are they going?" Veltar asked. His answer came in an urgent message from Nexari High Command. Human fleets had been detected approaching the Nexari homeworld in 3 major colonies. The message was brief but terrifying. "Human vessels targeting civilian populations. Return immediately." Veltar stared at the message in disbelief. They would not dare attack non-combatants. Admiral Sora appeared on his screen again, and her expression was colder than space itself. Commander, you invaded our homes. You attacked our civilians. Did you think we would limit ourselves to military targets? That is barbaric. Veltar protested. Civilized species do not make war on civilians. Civilized species don't invade other people's homes either, Admiral Sora replied. But here we are. Veltar felt his understanding of the universe beginning to crumble. You cannot seriously intend to attack innocent Nexari, the same way you attacked innocent humans. Admiral Sora asked. Commander, you started a war with a species you didn't understand. Now you get to see what human warfare actually looks like. The transmission switched to show multiple displays. Veltar saw human fleets approaching Nexari worlds, but they were not targeting military installations. They were positioning to attack schools, hospitals, cultural centers, and civilian infrastructure. This is monstrous, Veltar whispered. This is effective, Admiral Sora corrected. You see, Commander, your people fight to defend territory and resources. Humans fight to defend our existence. When you threaten our existence, we threaten yours. A new voice joined the conversation. Veltar saw a young human officer he had not encountered before. I am Colonel Jinwoo of Human Intelligence, the man said. We've been studying your species, Commander Veltar. We know what you value, what you protect, what you cannot bear to lose. You know nothing about us, Veltar said, but his voice lacked conviction. We know everything about you, Colonel Jinwoo replied. We know your cultural sites, your historical monuments, your most treasured art collections. We know where your leaders' families live, where your children go to school, where your most important research facilities are located. The displays showed detailed intelligence about Nexari worlds that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Veltar realized with growing dread that while he had been studying human military capabilities, they had been studying Nexari civilization itself. This is not war, Veltar said desperately. This is terrorism. No, Admiral Sora said firmly. Terrorism is attacking civilians to create fear. War is attacking everything your enemy values to force them to stop fighting. We're not trying to scare you, Commander. We're trying to make you understand that continuing this conflict will cost you more than you're willing to pay. As if to emphasize her point, reports began flooding in from across Nexari space. Human forces were not randomly attacking civilian targets. They were systematically targeting the things that made Nexari civilization possible. Power grids, communication networks, transportation hubs, and food distribution centers. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, High Command is ordering all fleets to return to defend the homeworld. Veltar looked at the tactical display showing the ongoing battle at Terra Nova. His forces were winning, but slowly, and at great cost. Meanwhile, human fleets were threatening the heart of Nexari civilization. This is not how war is supposed to work, he said to no one in particular. Admiral Sora heard him. Commander, you keep talking about how war is supposed to work. But war isn't a game with rules. War is what happens when one group tries to destroy another group. You wanted to destroy human independence. Now we're trying to destroy your ability to threaten us, but the cost... Veltar began. The cost of what? Admiral Sora interrupted. The cost of fighting? The cost of losing? Commander, you're the one who decided those costs were acceptable. You just thought you would be the one collecting payment, not making it. Veltar realized that everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. The Nexari had spent centuries fighting limited conflicts with clear rules and predictable outcomes. But humans had spent their entire history fighting wars where losing meant extinction. And they had learned lessons that no other species in the galaxy understood. What do you want? He asked finally. Originally, we wanted you to leave us alone, Admiral Sora said. But you've taught us that the galaxy is full of species like yours. Species that think superior technology gives them the right to dominate others. And now we want you to understand that humanity is not going to be dominated. Not by you, not by anyone. If that means we have to become the most dangerous species in the galaxy, then that's what we'll do. Veltar stared at the displays showing human fleets approaching the most important worlds in Nexari space. For the first time in his long military career, he was not sure his side could win. Worse, he was beginning to understand that winning might cost more than the Nexari Empire could afford to pay. The humans had taught him the difference between battle and war. He was no longer certain he wanted to learn any more of their lessons. High Command's response to the human threat was swift and absolute. Veltar received orders that made his hands shake as he read them. Complete extermination of human species authorized. Use all available force, no survivors. The Nexari leadership had decided that humans were too dangerous to exist. If they could not be conquered and controlled, they would be destroyed entirely. Veltar was given command of the largest fleet in Nexari history. Over 1,000 ships equipped with planet-killing weapons and enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. As his massive armada gathered, Veltar felt a mixture of relief and unease. Relief because this would finally end the nightmare of fighting an enemy that refused to follow civilized rules. Unease because he had never been ordered to commit genocide before. "Sir, the fleet is assembled and ready," his tactical officer reported. Veltar looked at the displays showing his force. It was magnificent, the combined might of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. No species had ever faced such overwhelming power and survived. "Set course for the nearest human system," he ordered. "We will demonstrate to these barbarians what happens when they threaten civilized order." But as the fleet moved toward human space, Veltar received a transmission that made him pause. It was from a human he had never seen before. An elderly man wearing simple clothes and standing in what appeared to be a modest office. "Commander Veltar, I am President Wu Jin of the United Human Colonies," the man said. "I understand you're coming to destroy us." "Your species has made that necessary," Veltar replied. "You have violated every principle of civilized warfare, have we?" President Wu Jin asked mildly. "Or have we simply shown you what real warfare looks like when survival is at stake?" "It does not matter now," Veltar said. "You will be eliminated before you can spread your barbarism to other species." President Wu Jin was quiet for a moment, then nodded sadly. "I was afraid you would choose that path." "Very well, Commander. If extermination is your goal, then extermination is what we'll give you." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar puzzled. The human president had not begged for mercy or offered surrender. He had simply accepted the situation. There was something deeply unsettling about that calm acceptance. His unease grew when his sensors began detecting massive human fleet movements throughout their territory. But these were not defensive deployments. The humans appeared to be abandoning their colonies and concentrating their forces in deep space. "Sir, human evacuation patterns suggest they are preparing to abandon their worlds entirely," his science officer reported. "Running away?" Veltar asked hopefully. "Unknown, sir. But the evacuation ships are not heading toward the galactic rim. They're heading toward everywhere." Before Veltar could process that information, another transmission came through. This time it was Admiral Sora, but she was no longer on a ship bridge. She was standing in what looked like a massive underground command center, surrounded by displays showing star maps that covered the entire galaxy. "Hello again, Commander Veltar," she said. "I wanted you to see this before we begin the final phase." "Final phase of what?" "The final phase of the lesson we've been teaching you," Admiral Sora replied. "You see, when you decided to exterminate humanity, you solved a problem we've been struggling with for years." "What problem?" "The problem of justification," Admiral Sora explained. "As long as you were just trying to conquer us, we had to limit our response to avoid seeming like the aggressors. But now that you've declared your intention to commit genocide, we can respond appropriately." The displays behind Admiral Sora lit up with tactical information that made Veltar's mind reel. Human fleets were not just evacuating their colonies. They were positioning throughout the galaxy, targeting hundreds of systems that had nothing to do with the current conflict. "What are you doing?" Veltar demanded. "We're implementing the Prometheus Protocol," Admiral Sora said, named after the human myth about stealing fire from the gods. "It's our plan for what to do if a superior species ever tried to exterminate us." "Prometheus Protocol? Total galactic warfare," Admiral Sora explained calmly. "If humanity dies, we take as much of the galaxy with us as possible. Every species that stood by and watched our extermination becomes a target. Every world that benefits from Nexari protection becomes a casualty. Every civilization that remained neutral becomes a participant." Veltar stared at the displays showing human forces spread across the galaxy like some kind of infection. "You would destroy innocent species that have nothing to do with our conflict?" "Commander, you just told me your intention is to commit genocide against humanity," Admiral Sora replied. "Did you expect us to go quietly?" Did you think we would limit our response to protect species that refuse to protect us? The tactical displays showed the true scope of human preparation. They had not spent the past months just building ships to fight the Nexari. They had been positioning forces throughout the galaxy, gathering intelligence on dozens of species, and preparing to drag the entire galactic community into their war. "This is madness," Veltar whispered. "This is survival," Admiral Sora corrected. "You taught us that the galaxy is governed by force, not law. You taught us that superior technology gives you the right to destroy other species. Congratulations, Commander. We learned your lessons very well." A new voice joined the conversation, Colonel Jinwoo, speaking from a different location entirely. "Commander Veltar, while you were gathering your fleet, we were gathering intelligence on every major species in the galaxy," he said. "We know their weaknesses, their resources, their military capabilities. Most importantly, we know which ones would have helped you if they thought you were winning. You cannot seriously intend to attack the entire galaxy," Veltar protested. "Not attack," Colonel Jinwoo corrected. "Liberate. You see, we've realized something important about galactic civilization. It's built on fear. Species submit to the Nexari Empire because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. But what if they were more afraid of what happens if they do?" The implications of what he was suggesting hit Veltar like a physical blow. The humans were not just planning to fight back against the Nexari. They were planning to overthrow the entire galactic order and replace it with something based on their own understanding of warfare. "Sir, we're detecting human ships moving toward the Kythera system," his tactical officer reported with barely concealed panic. Veltar felt his blood freeze. Kythera was not an Nexari world. It was home to one of the galaxy's most ancient and peaceful species, beings who had never harmed anyone and who served as neutral mediators in galactic disputes. "They would not dare," he said. "Admiral." Sora's voice cut through his denial. "Commander, we've studied your empire's structure. We know that the Kythera provide the philosophical justification for your rule. They're the ones who convinced other species that Nexari domination is preferable to chaos. Without them, your entire system of control begins to collapse." "The Kythera are innocent," Veltar shouted. "The Kythera are collaborators," Admiral Sora replied coldly. "They legitimize your empire's oppression by calling it order. They convince other species to submit by promising that submission is safer than resistance. They are part of the system that allows species like yours to dominate species like mine." Veltar realized with growing horror that the humans had studied galactic civilization more thoroughly than the Nexari themselves had. They understood exactly which targets would cause maximum political and psychological damage. "What do you want?" he asked desperately. "We want you to understand the choice you've created," Admiral Sora said. "You can try to exterminate humanity, and we will drag the entire galaxy into a war that destroys everything you claim to protect. Or what? Or you can accept that humanity is not going to be conquered, controlled, or eliminated. You can withdraw your fleets, abandon your imperial ambitions in our region of space, and learn to coexist with a species that refuses to submit." President Wu Jin's face appeared on the screen again. "Commander Veltar, I want you to understand something. We don't hate the Nexari people. We don't even hate you personally. But we will not allow our species to be enslaved or destroyed." "And if we refuse?" Veltar asked. "Then you will learn what total war really means," President Wu Jin replied. "Every species in the galaxy will learn what happens when you threaten human survival. Some will blame you for starting it. Some will blame us for escalating it. But in the end, everyone will understand that humanity is not a species that can be safely threatened." Veltar looked at his massive fleet, still the most powerful military force ever assembled. But he also looked at the tactical displays showing human forces positioned throughout the galaxy, ready to begin a conflict that would consume everything he had spent his life protecting. For the first time in Nexari history, superior firepower was not enough to guarantee victory. The humans had found a way to make winning more costly than losing. "I need to consult with High Command," Veltar said finally. "Of course," Admiral Sora replied. "But don't take too long, Commander. Every minute you delay, more human ships reach their target positions. Soon, even if you wanted to stop this, you won't be able to." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at displays that showed the beginning of either.